Yeah.
All right. Let's get started.
So I get that laugh.
Welcome to the Level Up Farpoint podcast. Tonight's topic.
Without Farpoint.
Yeah, not featuring Farpoint.
Welcome to the Level Up and sometimes Farpoint podcast, broadcasting live from Farpoint's basement. Tonight's topic: Marvel events, specifically Marvel events, but comic book events in general. Joining me tonight, the lovely Jess, the handsome Tim, the also handsome Scott,
And single.
the not as handsome Gregg, and I'm your
True.
host Sean.
Who has beautiful hair, by the way?
The adequate Sean.
Yeah, the adequate Sean.
So, let's get started. Who wants to lead off the topic and explain just what an event is? Greg?
I guess I'll do that. Basically for me, the difference between event
What-
like where it's going
explain
now.
what an event
An
is.
event right now is, for instance, Original Sin, which is going on right now. Marvel. Basically, somebody killed the Watcher, and the whole Marvel universe is in shambles, trying to figure out who the murderer is.
Who's the Watcher and why should we care?
I don't know. To be honest with you,
He's a
The
bald guy
Watcher-
that lives on the moon
Watcher-
and is essentially a cosmic voyeur of
Yes.
the events of Earth.
he's watching you have sex right now.
Well, not anymore. Someone shot him.
And took
Well,
his eyes.
his eye still works though. Apparently.
No, his eyes are like some receptacle for everything that he's ever seen.
Oh,
so
that's
the
right,
history
so-
of all humanity,
Yeah.
including all parallel universes.
Well, thanks
Yeah.
for joining us. At the Level Up podcast.
Yeah,
This has been a great discussion.
Yeah.
What just happened? That's what we're talking about. This is, who the hell knows?
So what-
Watcher
so
is
seriously-
the Marvel Wikipedia.
Okay,
And we'll
so
move on from there.
that's the event. That's the big event for this year.
One of them, yes.
Yeah.
It's the current event.
The current-
What
It's
makes
a-
it? What
it's-
makes it an event?
It's when when you're reading a comic book and the plot that you've been following for 30 issues gets completely derailed to talk about something you have no idea about and then tells you go buy these other books in order to explain what happens. That's essentially what like events are.
Okay.
And that there's other there's like the big story in the universe that events tie in, that all the other books tie into or cross over into.
There's supposed to be like a game-changing something
Yeah.
that happens every year.
Like Captain America gets arrested, Spider-Man has his life ruined some more.
Something else tragically sad happens to him.
Yeah. His uncle comes back to life only to be shot again.
Yeah.
Only for
Multiple
him
times.
to accidentally kill him with a
For him to need to go back in time to be the shooter.
He has to do it, otherwise he won't learn with great power comes great responsibility.
And so evil Spider-Man from that continuity comes, well, this is an event that actually never happened,
And the
but
Watcher knows all about
Marvel,
it.
if you're listening, it could happen very soon.
All right, so
Oh, this
events
guy,
are kind of
man.
like a regular story in comics, but amped up, like a big summer blockbuster.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically
in one title.
that's
big-
what Original Sin's been billed as right now, is their summer blockbuster event. Like, Infinity was, I think, last year's, and then
Yeah.
Avengers vs.
Yeah.
X-Men was before that.
Was it even a year ago?
I can't believe it's been a year.
Avengers
long.
X-Men
Yeah.
was 2012. Age of
It was
Ultron was
last year.
2013.
Oh, yeah.
Infinity was last year also. Marvel's double dipping a little bit now. Avengers
Yeah.
like
Well, Infinity-
there's a summer event, and then there's like it's usually a small event a little bit later on in the year.
And I guess that's why we're talking about Marvel specifically, because
Yeah.
they're going full throttle on the
Yeah.
events.
There was also Inhumanity last year, too.
Inhumanity, and like what Marvel's been doing now, which to questionable success has been just from going from one event to the next. Like after Infinity ended, it was Inhumanity, which then went right into Original Sin.
She's on camera too. Watch.
We're professional. So, all right, Marvel's just one after the other then, and
Yeah.
And the reason being is because it boosts sales. That's what it does. It always has done that to varying degrees of success, but it always brought up sales for Marvel books and the tie-in parts to their
Yeah.
books.
Like it's something that people can jump in on because it's a semi-self-contained story. If you just read like the 6 issues that comprise the main event itself, but then also there's the tie-ins where it's like even if you don't normally read them, it's like, well, I have to pick this up because I'm really enjoying the main story. So like, I want to know what Deadpool's doing in this.
okay, so that's interesting because there's also the term crossover. What's the difference between an event and a crossover?
You were just explaining that.
Yeah, basically, a crossover is a bunch of titles. For instance, the Trial of Jean Grey, which just went through all new X-Men and Guardians of the Galaxy, and before that was the Battle of the Atom, which went through all the X-Men books. And crossovers are more or less where you have to read from one book to another book to another book. Basically, it's part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 in different titles. And if you don't read them in that particular order, you're usually lost. because it just jumps in from where the other book left off.
Okay. But an event would all be self-contained under one title. Then.
Yes.
With tie-in
With
issues.
tie-in.
With tie-in issues.
The big culprit for that, I think, is the X-Men genre.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the X-Men title because that blanket includes all of the X titles: Uncanny X-Men, All New X-Men, Wolverine and the X-Men, regular X-Men.
X-Factor.
Yeah, there's an
X
argument
Factor.
to
Not
be made
usually X
that
Factor, actually.
Yeah.
X-Men
It
just
can,
exists in a
though.
perpetual crossover.
Yeah,
So,
but there's like Trial of Jean Grey and stuff like that where they do giant crossovers.
Would Messiah Complex have been a crossover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was amazing.
That was good.
That was my favorite.
Is that also an
crossovers.
event?
It was an
It's a
X-Men
crossover
event.
event.
Yeah.
And
The Marvel tends to have, you can think of, at least how I think of it is that there's mini universes within Marvel where there's the Avengers books, there's Spider-Man books, and then there's X-Men books, and then they interact with each other. Like, there's the main Avengers book, right now there's like Avengers Undercover, there's Avengers World, there was Avengers AI, and there's all the Avengers who have their solo books, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, etc.
Man, I can't believe people are confused by comics.
Yeah.
It's easy to get into, fellas
It's so
and
simple.
ladies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, those tend to have a lot more crossovers and events in between them. Like Tim was saying, that the X-Men, they have their own, like, Battle for the Atom. It was which was their last big event, which involved time travel, which is pretty much what X-Men writers go to when they have absolutely no other idea. It affected only X-Men characters and the X-Men books, and there's been no universe-wide implications to our knowledge, whereas Original Sin, which is going on right now, is supposed to affect all of the books and all of the characters. So there's Avengers, there's X-Men, there's Spider-Man, there's all the other miscellaneous characters.
Well, it's funny to see that too, kind of going, the next day to actually announced the next event, which is called Axis, which is kind of a semi-sequel to Avengers vs. X-Men.
Wow.
Where basically, Red Skull, all the things been going for Red Skull, he's actually fighting both Avengers and X-Men, so they kind of team up to fight the Masters of Evil, or whatever they're going to be called in this, and I'm not sure if they're going to be called it, 'cause they haven't announced it.
Axis of
Axis of Evil, probably,
Yeah,
yes.
it's Avengers X.
Axis. It's marketing. Don't worry about it. It's way above your pay level.
But, like,
so.
I saw the advertising
Clearly.
for that where it's like, I guess Red Skull still currently has Charles Xavier's brain, and he's in the Onslaught armor, so it's just like, this looks so stupid.
Again,
Comics.
easy to get
Comics,
into.
That's comics.
Yeah,
But it's
but like
like
for
Doctor
example,
Doom stuff, yeah.
to events having universe-wide implications, like Professor X is a huge X-Men character. He's been there since the very beginning. He's like, even non-comic fans who only have the most peripheral understanding of X-Men kind of know who Professor X is. He's the bald guy in the wheelchair. And
Right.
Avengers vs. X-Men, which was the big event of I guess 2013 summer
2012.
summer 2012.
Already, I know.
Yeah, he died in that.
Again.
Spoilers.
Again,
But
yeah.
but that's one that they've been sticking with. That he's still dead as of June 2014, and so that was the big game changer for the universe. So that's what events are kind of billed as doing.
So I guess we already know how the next one's going to end. It's going to end with the return of Charles.
Probably.
Yes.
Well, also too, don't forget there's the tuition miniseries, the Last Will and Testament of Charles Xavier, which probably brings him and talks about him, and that's why they're bringing him back.
It sets up whatever MacGuffin
they're revealing
brings
a
back.
shocking twist to the X-Men that will change the characters forever,
Oh yay!
which usually means either
yes.
he's not dead, there's a child that no one knew about, or
His sister's coming back.
Time travel. Or
Yeah.
time travel.
His son.
Yeah,
I don't
Charles
know,
Xavier from the 60s is gonna come and be like, why did you kill me?
Get ready, all new, all different Xavier. Number one.
So,
Coming
all right.
November 2014.
So we're being really sarcastic about it because it's easy to make fun of, but they keep doing it, so it must work.
Yeah.
There are some really good ones out there. I don't know how effective it would be at telling a good story. I know it's effective sales-wise.
What do you mean by telling a good story? Like effective?
Their whole idea, like we all just commented about how it's supposed to be a game changer. It's supposed to change the way that comics are written. It's supposed to change the story from here on out. And 95% of the time, it does not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Unfortunately,
springboard off that, like, I remember after Secret Invasion, they're like Dark Reign, when the bad guys took over, like Norman Osborn's Avengers were the Avengers. And I remember thinking even then, I was like, next year is going to be where they come down, so why bother getting so invested in this right now? Because they had a million little miniseries like Dark Reign, Red Hood, or,
Yeah, Red Hood.
Yeah, it was
not
Red
Red Hood. Sorry,
No, the Hood.
The Hood. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew Red Hood was wrong as soon as I said it. His hood is red, but there was a whole bunch of little Dark Spider-Man, which was the Venom at the time.
Unfortunately, that's like one of comics' biggest problems is that there's a norm that people sort of know. It's like or grew up with, like Peter Parker is in high school and he has bad luck with women, and or Captain America was scrawny Steve Rogers, and you can do shocking changes for like a quick publicity stunt, but people know and they understand that original core origin, and deviating too much upsets long-term comic readers and makes it harder for new comic readers to jump in when they only have like a very surface pop cultural understanding.
So is there any event that has had a lasting change in the universe that it took place in?
They've been usually smaller things that last. Like one of their earliest events, if not the first, was Secret Wars. The biggest change in that is the symbiote came about.
Right.
And that was more... And that wasn't necessarily the idea for that, like, the idea for, we're going to make an alien symbiote for Spider-Man and that. It was more, they wanted to change his costume. Fans didn't really grab onto it at first, so they came up with a way out of it. And then once they've got rid of, they were able to get the black costume off of him. Fans liked it by then, so they made Spider-Man actually make black costumes, so whatever artist could just use whichever costume they wanted to use.
Another more recent one, which isn't as big of a deal as the symbiote, was in Siege, where Asgard came down to Earth, and it's still on Earth.
Is it?
Above Broxton still, yeah.
Is it still there?
Oh, yeah, I forgot
So,
that
that was
happened.
only like 4 years ago, but that's still, lasting. It's a pretty big thing right now.
I would still argue House of M was pretty big. House of M happens to be one of, if not my favorite event, where that was, for a quick rundown for people who aren't exactly familiar, the Scarlet Witch goes insane. She creates a little pocket dimension that is supposed to grant everyone's wishes so that they don't question what happened to their world. And then at the end of it, she says, no more mutants, and essentially depowers the millions of mutants that exist in the world and only leave like 200 with their powers. And at least for fans of X-Men, it changed a huge amount of the characters. Like some of your favorites no longer had powers, some of them just flat out died. And then even to this day, it's like a super kind of controversial thing that happened with it, and the X-Men character, like a lot of the events that subsequently happened were as a result of that, like Utopia as a result of Schism, and what's going on now after Avengers versus X-Men were all as a result of what happened in the House of M.
But even with that, they've started to walk that back, haven't they?
Yeah.
There are mutants popping up again.
Inhumans, pretty much just went, all right.
Avengers versus X-Men reversed the events of House of M.
That was the head of that story.
And now there's New Mutants again, and they're trying to redeem the Scarlet Witch.
Well, so even though that one still has repercussions, the change has been undone.
Yeah.
Yes.
It affected character decision, like character paths. Like it, you can pinpoint it as like when Cyclops started making more drastic decisions and went from kind of like the golden child of the X-Men to someone who would make more like choices about, well, he could probably die because he's hurting mutants more than help.
Kind of same thing what you're saying with that. Out of Schism, Wolverine became kind of like what Professor X is. Like he wants to bring everybody together, coexist in a peaceful way. And I think going back to what we're talking about, they talk about these drastic game-changing things, but I think when it actually comes down to, by the end of these events, it's smaller, more character-driven things that stay more permanent than the actual
Yeah, I agree.
Captain America dies
Absolutely.
or whatever else. So, like you said, these people, Cyclops is still like this, now he's like this Magneto-style character in his book, and that started, like you said, back with House of M and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, like,
Scott, go ahead. You were going to say something.
For instance, Civil War was a lot of things happened in that where there was underground superheroes because they didn't want to they didn't want to register with the government. They had this 50-state initiative. Spider-Man was revealed as Peter Parker to the public.
Yep.
What of those changes still exist? None.
Yeah.
That was only 6 years ago.
They still reference that though in the comics, don't they?
I haven't heard
not
it
so
ever.
much.
They did a few years ago, but honestly, it's few and far between.
They
now.
backpedaled on Iron Man moving into the bad guy role of that by saying it was some really stupid, like someone was messing with his brain, something like that, and then they cut it out of him, and it was very complicated and stupid, and it was such an obvious retread that they didn't want to stick to their guns with the decisions they had this character make.
And that you might even be able to point to, like, he kind of became, like, Iron Man became more of a popular character after after his movie.
Yeah.
So you were getting new fans, and to have him painted as sort of like a bad guy, quote unquote, or it wasn't exactly conducive to sales, where it's like you see Tony Stark in the movie as a hero, and then come into comics where he's kind of a jerk.
Thank you.
Or like, even or that after the years you see that fans reacted negatively to X or Y choice you made in this event that was supposed to be a game changer, and so you want to reverse those.
It's funny you talk about that, because that is true. I completely agree with you about how they change their characters to go off the movies. But now, do you read Avengers, Jess? Right now?
No.
So basically right now, there's another group called the Illuminati, and he kind of runs, and he's kind of like more that gray area right now, where there's I forget what happened in Avengers, like some rogue planet went into this Earth, and some mum gobbledygook, whatever, doesn't matter. But the basic thing is to save our Earth, Tony Stark might have to destroy a different Earth, and that's kind of like a moral gray area to save his world. So it's kind of like, as it further gets away from these movies, they kind of go back to what his character was kind of becoming, because they're not near movies anymore. And
speaking of even movies, I know the one thing that was kind of really that most of us didn't like was a year ago, Peter Parker was no longer Spider-Man. It was Dr. Octopus as in Peter Parker's body, and they and you, Scott, had really like angry feelings about that. Of they changed him back to Peter Parker just in time for the Amazing Spider-Man 2 to come in theaters.
Yes, and he's fighting the Electro, and it came out the same week. But you know what? I'm so used to that point. I remember when Spider-Man 3 came out. For some reason, he started wearing the black costume. Fought Sandman. Yeah, it was back in black, just in time for him to wear the black costume in the movie. But they do that all the time. It bothers me in that I can see that that's exactly what it is, but honestly, there's one, nothing I can do about it, and two, if I'm not seeing it coming at this point, or from any of these things.
Well, Greg, so we're making fun of this. We're kind of complaining about it. Does it help or hurt? Is it a good thing that comic book publishers keep doing this year after year?
I think it is. The thing I don't know is if it's the long-term health. If it's the same, 50,000 people reading the book or buying tie-ins or whatever. But for instance, I did a little research and looked up with Civil War and how much it sold. And basically, Civil War started out about issue 1 with 290,000 copies, which is, pretty good for even nowadays. That's still pretty good. It still ended up with about 263,000 by the end of the series, issue 7. So I went back and actually looked at Iron Man, since he was a main character in that story. Issue 12, which is the issue right before the tie-ins to Civil War, his book sold about 36,000 copies. The 3 issues that were tie-ins to Civil War sold respectively 79, 74, and 68,000 copies. So it did punch up his title also. But then I decided to go look a year later. 1 year later, almost exactly a year later from issue 15 of that last one they did, 68. It went back down to almost exactly what it was a year ago, which was 36,000 copies. So in the short run, it does boost sales, and it does keep some readers. The problem is it usually never keeps readers.
And when they do these events, I remember when, I think when Civil War was happening, Joe Quesada was going on like the Colbert Report and stuff. Like, I remember when Captain America died, that was on national news.
Oh, whenever these big events hit, there's typically a CNN article about it. It's like Captain America dies, or whatever the main spoiler is. They tend to make a news story out of it.
But so it gets it kind of back out into like the mainstream consciousness, not necessarily like some people more in just our bubble, like the comics bubble.
But still, you're talking about
Yeah, it doesn't
less
matter.
than 300,000
Yeah.
copies of a single
But even
issue.
just getting
It's-
just an idea of that comics are still happening and they're cool. Like even
Yeah.
just getting that out there
It was-
amongst all of the movie stuff.
It gives people a little like factoid that they can bring up, where it's like, did you know that Captain America once died?
Right.
But like I don't know.
Overall, a good thing for the comic industry, even if we get to sit around and complain about how dumb they are.
I think the big factor in between them is it is a good thing. It would be a better thing if it was done a little better.
I think they need to be spaced out more.
I don't know
Yeah.
if it's done a little better is the right word. I think if it's somehow maybe better, but it needs to keep readers. More than a year.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means be better or like I don't know. I don't know. I'm not since I'm a comic book reader. I don't know what goes through a non-comic book reader's head when he comes in. Oh, let me buy a comic because I saw this
Yeah.
movie. Oh, I want to drop out of it now, and that's the thing I wish I knew.
Well,
You go ahead.
the big factor for me is like House of M and Civil War were two, again, in my opinion, great events. I think the real reason for that is it pulls, like an event should, it pulls the entirety of the cast in. It has the majority of the heroes that you're used to, that you can name, that as soon as you see them, you're like, oh man, it's them. They're all in the same book. They're all doing something about what's happening. Even if it's ridiculous or silly, they all appear there. They all show up. It's not like Avengers or like Iron Man 3 where you're like, why wouldn't he knows the Hulk now? Why wouldn't he just be like, hey Hulk, can you help me? Like it makes it feel like it's a vibrant world and not just that one comic.
But on the reverse of that, there's events. Like there's events that go on and there's books that tie into them where they have virtually nothing to do with the event that they're supposed to be tying into.
Yeah.
Like when Inhumanity, which was the event before where Inhumans, who are super enhanced, sort of mutant-like, are appearing now around the Earth. There was an issue of Uncanny X-Men that tied into it, and literally it was just 2 pages that referenced it, and then they just kind of skirted around where it's just like they're walking down the street and it's like, oh, that looks interesting. Inhumans, oh, cool. Anyway.
That happens in X Factor a lot because there was always a lot of X-Men books, but since they're kind of not really near the core of the X-Men, they're kind of their own thing. Like I remember when Schism happened, Wolverine showed up in one issue and was like, I just need to know what side you're on, Bubs. And
That's pretty much what happened. Yeah.
but why bother even being involved in it at that point? It's just so they can slap the title.
No,
of it
it's
on
funny.
top of it.
You're exactly right because I was actually reading an article about Peter David. And he was saying that's the exact reason why he was forced to go into it. So that's how he got around it by going, he's in this for a few seconds and you're done.
Since you brought up X Factor, I guess one thing I wanted to mention was I only got into comics maybe two and a half years ago, and when I first started getting into it, what really helped me was people pointing to events where it's just like, here's a self-contained story. Yeah. You really could just read this from issue 1 to 6. They're mini-series more or less where you can read that, feel it's a self-contained story, and be introduced to a wide cast of characters, backgrounds, and ones you may not have known. That's where I started with it. That really helped me. Books like X Factor, where even if they really clumsily kind of bring up where like Wolverine appears for 2 issues and it's like, pick a side, and it's like, wait, why is Wolverine asking you to pick a side? And I go and I read it, it's like, oh, because this is happening, let me go read that sounds interesting. Where you're reading a book, there's stuff happening that you may not be aware of, but it introduces you to that, and that just depends on how well the writer incorporates the other event into the book itself.
And I know we do that at the store a lot when people are asking for books to jump into.
Mm-hmm.
We hand them
Usually-
Civil War and stuff.
There's typically 2 we offer, the event books and then like the one-off Elseworlds styles.
Or, like, if they-
X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills, and stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah, if they ask for like, I really like this character, like you can recommend
what's
them
he in? Yeah.
like volume 1 of whatever his current series is, or like, I really like Iron Man. Do you have any good Iron Man recommendations? Yeah, Civil War. He was in that a lot. He's kind of complicated in that. It's like you might like that.
So frustrating for fans sometimes, but ultimately a good thing for the industry.
No, she got me thinking. Like when I collected comics as a kid, but not real. I wasn't really I wasn't in the store every week buying comics. I kind of got back into them after the first Spider-Man movie came out, and it reignited my interest in comics. And I bought a Wizard magazine, because it listed the top 100 graphic novels, and it was stuff like Crisis on Infinite Earths, things like that I was able to kind of get into. And yeah, there was a lot of especially in that book, there was a lot of characters I didn't know, but it kind of got me interested in stuff. So yeah, I guess they have their good points as well.
And also, like, even if the single issue sales, like you brought up, where it certainly helped, it'd be interesting to see the trade paperback, the graphic novel sales for that, because those, I'm sure, help a lot. Their price point is significantly higher than the the individual comics, I should say, and then. Like we were saying, we recommend them a lot, so people buy them way more in after fact.
Yeah, years after they've hit the stands, people are still looking for them.
Yeah, like the Dark Phoenix saga or the Days of Future Past have probably sold significantly more in trade paperback form than the actual issues did.
Right,
definitely.
Okay, I actually think that is a really good place to start wrapping up. But before we go, I wanted to go around and get everybody's favorite event from the past, either ongoing or in the distant past. Let's start with Jess. What would you say your favorite event? Marvel, DC, it doesn't matter.
It's honestly probably right now a big tie between House of M, which I mentioned, and Annihilation, which is the kind of big kickoff for the Cosmic Marvel series that Guardians of the Galaxy and Nova, where they're saving space from alien bugs.
Okay.
I normally have a emotional problem with them. As soon as I read them, I get mad. But
so no favorites.
Actually, any of the Green Lantern ones.
Green Lantern ones have been very good. Yeah.
Yeah, from Rebirth on,
Sinestro Corps War,
Sinestro Corps War, the War of the Lanterns, like
Blackest Night.
Yeah, I've enjoyed pretty much any of them up until issue 20. When they switched writers and he was done.
Jeff Johns went off, I think it was 27.
26.
No, it was like 20.
20?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
All right. Scott.
Again, going off that wizard list, one of them on there was Secret Wars, which I thought was cool, and I remembered it from a few crossover episodes of the Spider-Man cartoon. And that was
I remember that.
Yeah, for a long time that was my favorite. I've recently reread it. It doesn't hold up as well, but you know what? It's all of the major superheroes coming together. They were scooped up with all of the major bad guys and just dumped on a planet to fight it out, and it's goofy comic book fun, and it's kind of what I want out of an event.
How about you, Greg?
I mean, kind of a throwback. Also, I loved Contest of Champions, which is basically all the heroes fighting each other. They get scooped up. I forget what cosmic entity did it, and they have to fight each other like in an arena style.
Is that Marvel?
Yeah, it's Marvel.
It was Beyond the Beyonder.
Yeah, stuff like that. That was good. And recently, I mean. Recently, I guess Civil War's probably, and World War Hulk. Actually, World War Hulk was awesome. I really loved that.
I really like
that. Was just Hulk smashing things.
I like the beginning of World War Hulk.
Yeah, I like the idea of World War Hulk.
It started strong.
Yeah. If you count Planet Hulk was awesome.
Planet Hulk was good. Yeah.
I consider that more of its own.
What about you, Sean?
I actually would have to say Sinestro Corps War. Because I thought that was one of the comics that got me back into comics before we opened the store.
Dude, those are good. That Jeff
Johns is a whole expansion of the Green Lantern universe is probably one of the best things that have happened to.
Right, it was exciting, and it was like you said.
It was awesome.
when you mentioned a jumping on point for readers. When I read it, it felt like a huge universe, like a peek into a much larger world that I had no concept of, and I wanted to know more. And I went back and I read everything Jeff Johns had done, and even stuff before that. So yeah, it was. You know, for me at least, that would have to be my favorite. And it does seem like it is a good thing. Whether it's not a perfect thing, and it is clearly a marketing gimmick, it does seem like it's a beneficial.
It's a good thing for the industry, a bad thing for comic fans. Not bad thing, but
everything's bad for comic fans.
Frustrating.
We're never happy.
Never.
One of the, I guess, the biggest. If you're in comics long enough, you see everything, and you see them go through so much with these characters, and you just know that it's gonna go back to a sort of status quo eventually. So you can either. It's really exciting for new people to get on there because everything feels new at this point, but comic fans get really jaded really fast because
you see it all, and you see it repeat, and then you see it again.
You see behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was a good discussion. I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
All right.
See y'all later.
Thanks for joining us. Hopefully, we'll see you next time.
Valiant rules.
This is
the Marvel podcast.
Greg's not actually the leader.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
We gotta work on our endings.